Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Homeowners insurance increasing or deductible too high? Call, click, or come in. Save a Dave. Dave Miette Insurance Agency.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
CNC Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, CNC provides patient-centered care for your entire family. CNC Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we will cover all the home teams, the Saints, Pelicans. We'll talk a little bit about the Breakers. We'll talk LSU, Tulane, UNO. And to break it down for us, one of the best we have in the city. I've said it before, an encyclopedia of knowledge. Jude Young of CrescentCitySports.com and, of course, all access on 106.1 FM-Icon. Jude, welcome to the show. Good to have you back, my friend. And before we get started, tell the folks about your fantastic site. And, of course, your radio show on 106.1 FM.
As you mentioned, All Access. Ken Trahan and I tag team it right after your show. That comes on from 4 to 6 on 106.1. We're 6 to 7. I'm normally on Tuesday nights, filling a little bit more during the summertime, but our main gig, that's Ken and I. CrescentCitySports.com. We're awfully busy year-round, including right now the Crescent City Sports Prep Summer League Baseball. We're very happy to be a presenting sponsor of that particular opportunity for a lot of the best programs in the area to sort of get that extra experience they need during the summer months. So that's going on, and of course we're covering Saints off-season, OTAs, minicamp coming up. Pelicans draft, you name it, we're on it at Crescent City Sports. No doubt about it. And before we get started today, there's an announcement that's probably happening right now at Saints Camp. Ken Trahan making the announcement. And, of course, that is the newest inductees into the Saints Hall of Fame. And you got the information for us. I sure do. Fred McAfee, who, of course, has worked for the Saints for a long time, a running back and known more as the special teams guru. Along with Devery Henderson, talk about a Louisiana hero, Brobridge, LSU, and the Saints. Those are the two former players going in. And Kevin Mangum, longtime Saints trainer. He's lasted through regimes, so that tells you how good of a job he's done for so many years with the Saints. He is the Fleur-de-Lis Award winner, and they'll all be honored later during the season. I believe in October they've planned that particular weekend to honor them during and before a Saints game. Well, no controversy there, right? I mean, again, Fred McAfee, again, a really good player for the Saints, and then went on to still be, really, I guess it's the Peyton era, part of that coaching staff. Right. Liaison between the players and management. He's there. He's in the players' ear every day. When you talk about Devery Henderson, of course, you mentioned local player. A guy that at LSU wasn't a great polished receiver and wasn't a guy who really could catch the ball consistently. He was a second-round pick in the Haslett era, right? Okay, so that was right before Peyton came in. And when you talk about, again, the ability to be able to make yourself a pro, he's the poster child for it because
again, he went from a guy that couldn't catch the ball to a guy that was reliable for Drew Brees, especially on those deep balls. And it took work. I mean, we know the work he put in on the jug machine to become a polished receiver. So again, very well deserved for him as well.
It's reminiscent of when Lance Moore and Pierre Thomas went in together. They had to work to get there, even though Devery, as you mentioned, a pretty high draft pick. They both had to work to be NFL players. Of course, Freddie McAfee coming from Mississippi Valley. He was a leading rusher for the Saints in their division title, first title-winning year in '91, but then had to battle to stay in the league, and he did so through special teams. And the guy is in playing shape today. Let me tell you, he looks fantastic. So he worked his way to have a great NFL career, go to the Pro Bowl as a special teams ace. Meanwhile, Devery, he had to work too. You talked about how raw he was. It's because he came in as a running back.
That's right.
His build much more suited to be a wide receiver, and he didn't have the natural hands for it. So he kept working hard and got better and better throughout his career. It took hours on the jugs gun, on the field, to perfect his craft, I should say. And you don't make it with Drew Brees as a reliable receiver if you don't work hard and get to the point where you can be trusted. So those two guys are just heroes across the board as far as Saints history go, and still have a nice connection to the franchise today.
I had forgotten that he played running back at LSU and got moved. That's right. So it took him a while to really kind of learn how to be an NFL wide receiver. And of course, you know, before his career was over, he was a deep threat and again feared in the NFL. You know, but good to see him going in the Saints Hall of Fame as well. And did they move the Hall of Fame now at the facility, at the Dome? Where's the facility going to be right now?
They're working on plans. There's some information I know from behind the scenes that I can't share. But they're working on plans to have a new set-aside museum. Because the Superdome needed the extra space, and Ken Trahan and the board really wanted a location that people could come to year-round. It could be promoted. So they're working on a really great plan that they're not yet ready to release, but it should be by the end of the year that they'll start construction on a brand new museum that fans can really go to and enjoy anytime they want to year-round. It's really exciting plans.
Because when it was at the Dome, you had to make an appointment to go and see, during the week, and it was open on game days.
And parking, always a problem when you talk about the Superdome. If you want to come, people who would come on vacation, I'd see some of that go on and even help out with it to try to facilitate tours and whatnot. And it was a challenge. It was a good idea at the time, and I know there were plans across the street at the Tower to try to do more developments, including a full-time Hall of Fame that sort of fell through over time. So trying to find an alternative to that is very difficult. You talk about a massive amount of storage with all the memorabilia that's built up since 1988 when it started. It's been a challenge for Ken and others who have worked on it for many years, but they feel like they're very close to announcing a really good solution.
That's great. It really is good. It's good for the opportunity family. Like when it was in Rivertown, you know, kids made field trips there. It was they had access to it. There were regular hours of operation. So it'd be good to see again a new rebirth for the Hall of Fame, of the Saints Hall of Fame rather. Let's talk some Saints. First of all, are you concerned, and we don't know, again, who showed up today. I would guess, and this is just guessing now, okay? I have no idea who's there, who's not. There's a moratorium on, again, till after practice ended on when we can start getting information via social media on who was there and who wasn't. But I would guess that this week would probably be the week where we'd see more veterans at OTAs than maybe we've seen in the past. My only beef with the Saints is I wish they would come out and say, look, this group of players are coming off of injury. They are here. They're working out in the facility. They're rehabbing, but they're not on the field. Okay, and then of course we know that DA's already said that everybody that is not there, that is a veteran, even though it is in a voluntary situation, he knows the situation, and I guess they've got quote unquote a permission not to be there. But this is, to me, again, I've always said OTAs are huge because it's not only for culture building, it's also getting your body ready. Think about it. Okay, the season ended in January, right? We're in June now. You're at the start of the OTAs. You've had a few months now to maybe spend time with the family, maybe kind of let your body heal up. But it's a quick turnaround now when you turn around from OTAs to minicamp to that little bit of a break, and then end of July you're in training camp, and it's a straight shot all the way to January again. So you got to have your body ready to go.
Right, and I trust the veteran players who have made their bones in the league already to have their bodies ready to go. I don't think that's a big issue. I know that if the media wanted to be more dogged and determined about it, they could probably force some answers on more guys out there. But I can also understand why the Saints aren't freely giving as far as personal matters that may be going on with some of these guys, as well as those that we know, like Michael Thomas prominently, that we still aren't sure 100% back from injury. That said, minicamp, end of July. Until then, nothing else really matters. The Saints, if they were concerned, they now have cap room. It wasn't like that in January, but they have cap room now. If they felt like they had an issue that they needed to address, there's still players out there that can play in this league that can address them. So say after minicamp, if we see the Saints maybe sign another player, that will give you an indication of if this is a veteran player and it's a decent contract level player, that's going to tell you that maybe there is a concern with player X at that position. Until then, it's all speculation that's really sort of firing into the air. Well, I don't see any reason to do that. It seems like the Saints are really comfortable with their depth and quality at pretty much every position. And until we see them bring in somebody to work out and sign them, I don't think there's a major concern. We'll have all of our answers very early in training camp based on who's available to participate on the field, with Thomas being the headline guy by far.
The good thing is, again, at least they've shown some video of him out there running, working out. You would like to see him on the field. It's been 2 years, okay?
The concern I have with him, too, is you want to see him get as many reps with Jameis Winston and even Andy Dalton as possible, because you want that chemistry to be there. If he's going to be your #1 guy in this offense, even though it shouldn't necessarily have to, because you brought in a guy like Jarvis Landry, who's a go-to type talent, and your first-round pick, your big investment in Chris Olave, they need to see the ball. But you still want Thomas to be your #1 option, and the timing needs to be there because his whole ability to be a dominant receiver is built on being the type of guy who can catch 8-10 balls a game, and that means a lot of short to intermediate routes where timing is so important.
Yeah, I would agree. When you look at this team right now, and I agree 100%, we're coming out of minicamp, leading into training camp, there's still a lot of veterans, quality veterans that are still out there that maybe are holding out for a better contract, or maybe to again get with a team that has a chance to maybe win a Super Bowl. It'll be interesting to see again what direction they go. The one that sticks out immediately is running back. You know, again, is Abram Smith the guy that they feel can come in, and if Alvin Kamara is suspended or Mark Ingram is injured, can be able to handle the workload? Is Ezigbo a guy that they can rely on week in, week out? If not, that may be a place where they have to go get a veteran. Your thoughts?
No, I think the answer is they don't feel like that can possibly be an assumption at this point. There's no way you're going to know until you see them every day with full pads on, even preseason games where it's not necessarily that important to a lot of guys, players like that. It is, and we didn't even mention Tony Jones Jr. Was he not as effective last year as some thought he would be based on camp in the preseason because of an early regular season injury? So he'll get another opportunity to prove himself. That said, I feel like if there's one position they're going to sign one more veteran before camp, it's going to be at running back, and there's some good names still out there who have been solid players in the league, who have been at least fill-in starters, and even one of them being Latavius Murray, if you think he still has gas in the tank.
Exactly. No, that's the first one I thought of. You know, knows the system. Obviously, a guy that maybe left a little bitter because of the contract situation, but you know, it is what it is. He played pretty well for Baltimore last year, and he may be a guy that ultimately can help them. The other one is, we've been talking about it since the summer began, really even into the spring. Quan Alexander. Are they going to re-sign him? Is he going to end up with the New York Jets, where again he's got some ties there with their head coach? What's going to be the situation there? Look, I know that they have a lot of faith in Demario Davis and in the linebacking core now, but something can be said. You know, for Pete Werner, who is coming off a pretty decent year, but to maybe take the next step in year 2 here, but to have a veteran like that on this team, to me would be something that would help them in the long run. Now, we don't know what the money is, we don't know what the situation. We don't even know again how they feel about it to this point. But it's hard to, when you look at this team and you say, okay, where are the spots where maybe they have a little bit of an opening? To me, it is linebacker, and Alexander's still out there.
And I think the Saints have probably made enough contact with him and his representation to say, this is the offer we're willing to make you if you want to take it. My guess is that he probably has a standing offer, and maybe from the Jets as well. Just reading the tea leaves on Alexander's particular situation. I think the Saints see him as a guy who's that third linebacker, and not in the sense of the strong side linebacker.
Right.
That position is filled, Caden Ellis. But we're talking about the two guys who stay on the field. And Werner's more equipped to be an every down guy. He did it as a rookie. He proved that everything positive about his scouting report was true, because he can stay on the field, he can do a little bit of everything, and he's extremely smart, so he's not going to make mistakes. And of course, you have an all-pro caliber guy in the middle in Demario Davis. I think that they see Alexander where we saw him last year when he finally started playing, which is really good in coverage, but he does miss a lot of tackles and has some weaknesses as far as in the running game. So still a really good fit and can start for you and do a fine job of it. I think the Saints would like to have him back. I think it's Alexander who's out there looking and saying, will there be an injury this time of year during OTAs or mini camp? Maybe I should even wait to early training camp to see if I can find a place where I can start, because he probably wants to be a guy who's on the field all the time. And that opportunity, unless somebody gets hurt in New Orleans, isn't there.
Right. Let's talk about the rookies and guys that you think might break through and be able to contribute this season.
Well, I mean, obviously, Chris Olave, if he doesn't, it would be a stunner.
Right.
And it comes down to your other first-round pick. Is Trevor Penning going to be ready, make those changes in his technique that he needs to be a reliable pass blocker, because they want him on the field? You talked about Abram Smith. That's the interesting part of the conversation at running back about bringing in a veteran. I think any veteran you're looking to bring in is directly competing with one guy, and that's Mark Ingram. A guy like Smith has multiple avenues to make the team. He could prove himself to be the best option other than Kamara between now and the start of the regular season. Or he could just be the third running back because he's got that special teams acumen. He was good enough to plug in for Baylor on defense for 4 games and average 11 tackles a game just 2 years ago. So here's a guy who has a lot of different ways to become part of the 53-man roster, and it would not be surprising if he's healthy if he does. But having that veteran presence who knows what he's doing and been in the league, and somebody that you can rely on, say if something happens to Kamara week 1, that you can plug in early in the season and trust to be able to know how to pass block when asked to do so, maybe have to have 20 touches. Whether that's Ingram at this point or somebody else, they need to find that. But Smith will have a chance maybe to prove that he can do that, because he was a workhorse at least last year, his only year as a starter at Baylor. So he really stands out in particular. As far as other opportunities, there just aren't a lot there for a rookie to do anything other than prove themselves on special teams and make it as part of depth. That's the quality of the roster the Saints have.
Maybe a Lewis Crow at tight end if he can emerge.
Yeah, it's possible, but I think he's still a developmental guy, because Adam Troutman's not going anywhere. He's going to get one more chance to get full.
I think he's going to have a really good year, but that's just me.
And he should at this point. It is make or break for him, no doubt. Nick Vanette's still somebody they have a lot of money invested in, and I know he was hurt last year, but they believe in him as a blocker who has a little bit more there to show if he can stay on the field. And then the third tight end, Taysom Hill's not going anywhere. You've got to have a roster spot for him, and Juwan Johnson is going to be battling for those snaps with Hill as that stretch the field mismatch tight end who lines up outside, and you try to get one-on-one and use their athleticism. So tight end's going to be tough, although Krull does have the physical capabilities that a team like the Saints they're probably hoping they can sneak him on the practice squad and then think about him a year from now.
Talk about Jameis and again, him coming back from his injury. And look, a lot of people were, talking about the limp. I was just glad to see him out there throwing, being a leader, all the things you want your quarterback to do. We heard Jarvis Landry talk about he's tried to beat him to the facility. He can't do it. That's Breeze-like. That's what you want out of your quarterback.
Well, it seems he learned a lot from Drew Brees, and we've talked about, and others, his maturity seems to be no joke. It seems to be a legitimate deal where he's now married and realized, hey, an opportunity lost in Tampa Bay. This is my last true shot to be a starter in this league, and he's taking it as seriously as possible. And then coming back from a serious injury like that, it seems like he's already made progress just in OTAs as far as the limp being less noticeable. He's getting comfortable with the knee brace. And let's face it, he got hurt scrambling, but in general, he's a pocket passer. So as long as he can move laterally and have those quick steps that you need in order to avoid the rush, he should be fine moving forward. I'll remind folks that Joe Burrow was coming off a serious serious knee injury last year, and at this time of year was struggling about the same level. And I don't think was even participating in OTAs and didn't even look quite right early in training camp. So Winston's ahead of schedule, and he should be just fine. I don't think the Saints are worried a bit. And again, because you have a guy like Dalton behind him, there's no reason to worry. They're going to have a competent veteran starter who can win games that they didn't necessarily have for a lot of games last year after Winston got hurt.
Yeah, I'm with you. Offensive line. Any concerns on your part? Look, Ruiz had a really bad year last year, got exposed. Ramczyk hurt for really the first time. Armstead is gone now. Pete has been often injured, but again, they're hoping they have him healthy this year. Throckmorton showed a little bit last year. You go out and you get Penny, obviously, in the draft. Hurst is there for you. And McCoy's been a mainstay at center. Is there a concern for you when it comes to this offensive line? Is there still something to prove here?
There is, and I'm not so worried about tackle because I think Penning will work out. And even if he doesn't, James Hurst is a competent starter level there. He's no Teron Armstead, but he can get the job done. You have a all-pro right tackle. I'm worried about the interior, and obviously not at center because Eric McCoy is really good. It's the guard spots that you have to be concerned about because can Andrus Peat stay healthy? He's an investment. He's not going anywhere, so he's either going to be on the field and you take what you get from him and you wonder if he's overpaid, or you don't have him and you've got another hole to fill. And I don't know if Ruiz is a right guard. I wonder what kind of work he's been doing to strengthen his core and his base, because that seems to be a real problem for somebody who might be a square peg crammed into a round hole.
I agree with that.
He may be a center only, and talk about make or break. Nobody on the roster has more of a make or break season facing him than Ruiz, because if he can't hack it at guard this time and they decide to move forward with McCoy, there's no place for him to play in New Orleans.
Yeah. On the defensive line, which I think is one of the strengths of the team, obviously for that to happen, two guys have to emerge. That's Peyton Turner and Marcus Davenport.
Right, and I think Marcus Davenport is emerged, as I heard Shaquille O'Neal say one time about his early career.
Injury-free.
He came into the league almost merged. He just the injuries are such a huge concern. And it's so funny that Peyton Turner right away, nagging injuries crop up. Same type of build of athlete. Just exactly what the Saints are looking for. They want that 6'6"-ish, long arms, 270-pound type guy. But those guys have more areas, I think, for opponents to attack. And they're more likely when they're trying to move laterally, it seems, to deal with more injuries of the lower body. This is just speculation. Maybe it's just those two guys, but the similarities after 1 year with Peyton Turner, after what you've seen with Davenport, that has to be a concern. They've got to combine to give you a full season of good play. If both of them miss some time for injuries, and you hope they don't overlap, and you get that quality play from them, you should be okay. But at the same time, you do have to worry about Cam Jordan at his age. He could fall off a cliff at any time, and it looked like last year it had happened. He came on late. Hopefully that doesn't happen because the defensive line is supposed to be a strength. The Saints don't have one dominating pass rusher. It's a collective push-the-pocket effort. If you have those three guys all struggle and or hurt, then that changes how this defense functions.
I agree, but I've said this for years now. You know, the Davenport, now Turner, you can talk about the other guys that are playing defensive end. They got to give Jordan some help here at this point. I mean, you can't rely on Jordan to do everything like he's done since he came into the league for this team. Stop the run, be the pass rusher, get the hurries, etc. If those guys can just take a little bit of pressure where he has the ability to go one-on-one every game instead of having to deal with double teams, he's going to stay healthy, and also he's going to be productive. So, I mean, it's about the time when those guys kind of have to pick up Jordan here in the twilight of his career.
And that also goes along with, in the interior, David Onyemata needs the same type of help. Because maybe in the right matchup, a good right tackle that can neutralize Jordan, and we've seen that sometimes. Then it's the double teams going to Onyemata, and you're getting no interior push. So maybe a Kentavious Street steps in, being a full-time three technique. It sounds like that's the plan. He could add more there. But we all know if you can't get pressure off the blind side, you've got problems in this league, because you've got to come off the edge and give the quarterback something extra to worry about to help your overall defense. And that's got to be Turner. That's got to be Davenport. If it's not, they made the decision. They made the investment and let Trey Hendrickson go. And right now, that's looking like not the best decision.
No.
I'm not going to say a bad one,
Right.
but not the best decision. This year will tell the tale.
Especially the contract that he signed, because everybody wants to talk about he signed his big contract. He really didn't. I mean, if you really look at the contract terms, again, a lot of it, again, he's got to accumulate these bonuses, etc. The Saints could have matched if they wanted to. They went with Williams. They made that decision. Williams ends up in Baltimore this year. And I will be honest with you, I think the secondary is stronger now than it was last year. And I like the addition of May. I like the addition of Tyrann Mathieu. We'll see what this young kid Alontae Taylor can do. I like the corners they have right now. And again, I laughed a little bit about Sorensen, but if you're going to use him in spot duty on special teams, or again, maybe as a big nickel, that's not bad.
Right.
You've got C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who's one of the best at his position. I think the secondary is a real strength for this team. And I think even at the safety position, they've upgraded it now with, again, bringing the guys they brought in this offseason.
And that brings the door to be more multiple on defense, starting with your two starting safeties, because I think May and Mathieu can do a little bit more switching than what you had with more defined roles as far as a deep center fielder in Marcus Williams, and obviously an older player that's still, Malcolm Jenkins was still solid, but he had limitations, especially at the end of his career. So that opens the door to be more of an attacking team as far as bringing extra blitzing pressure. When you have a guy like Mathieu or C.J. Gardner-Johnson in particular, they thrive at that. You don't want to have to bring that. You want that to be a trick in your bag, not this is what we have to do to get past pressure.
Talk about the coaching staff, different roles now. Dennis Allen, obviously the head coach. You got co-defensive coordinators. Carmichael now will be calling the plays. There's no, Peyton taken away from him in the middle of the season. It's a new voice out there. There's a lack of a major voice out there in terms of Peyton for the first time in well over a decade. Your thoughts now as we get ready to jump into minicamp next week, and then a little bit of break, and then here comes training camp.
I mean, it's more of a concern on defense. I should say offense, isn't it? I don't have any problems with the defensive setup because you kept two quality assistants around by giving them the co-title, but Dennis Allen's still calling the shots on game day. It's just the reverse of what we saw with Sean Payton on the offensive side, but the offense was not good last year. They've added personnel in the areas they needed to help the passing game, but the offense simply wasn't good enough, and now can Pete Carmichael lead that ship because that's his side of the ball now. I mean, he's in charge, like Allen was really in charge of half the football team under Peyton for so many years. We'll see. I think he's a good enough play caller in spot duty. He's been a good enough play caller. It's really going to come down more to how Winston functions at quarterback. But it's still a concern because we don't know how creative Carmichael can be. We don't know if he can, from week to week, find those weaknesses, those areas where you can exploit or not, because we haven't seen him do it in such a long time. So since it's an unknown and things change so rapidly from year to year in the NFL, seeing is going to be believing.
And here's the other part. And look, I'm not downplaying Sean Payton. I'm not bringing up Carmichael, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We have no idea if it was Peyton that were making these changes in the middle of the week, or it was a collective effort, or it was Carmichael, it was one of the other assistants that were involved in this. Obviously Peyton gets the credit because he's the offensive genius. It's his offense. But remember, Drew Brees was in that room as well.
Exactly.
And he made a lot of difference. So how much say will Winston have week to week in the game plan? And then what's going to be the identity of this offense now? Is it going to be a deep throwing offense where, again, they're going to be trying to take the top off? Will Winston feel much more comfortable now that he has weapons and throwing the ball over the middle, which has been a weakness for him throughout his career? And then how much are they going to run the football now with a defensive-minded coach? I think those are all questions going into training camp.
Well, there are a lot of different answers, and I think the Saints' answer to you would be, we want to be multiple. We want to be less predictable. We have better personnel at wide receiver, but maybe it's true that Winston will have to grow as a quarterback and prove he can be an accurate, short, intermediate guy, better than we've seen in the past, because you brought in Jarvis Landry. Okay? You have Michael Thomas hopefully fully healthy, and you know where they thrive. You've got to play to their strengths. And, I mean, there's a lot of change when you look at the offense as a whole, even though the personnel hasn't experienced massive overall changes, but your offensive line, by bringing in Doug Marrone, you're changing your blocking scheme. He's got a different concept overall. There'll be more of a mix of zone versus gap and power. He's a multiple kind of coach. So how will your offensive line respond to that? I just think that we know that Trevor Penning is a superb blocker. Even though it was FCS level, his grades are through the roof, and he's a mauler. So if you have that, then that's a strength you can rely on a little bit more and run. And because you have such good tackles, that means you can still have that wide zone running game that seems to have been a focus the last few years, and maybe it works better because you have true maulers on both sides to be able to execute it. So there's some areas where you can rely on what you already know, but there's a lot to mix in to try to get the most out of this offense that was pitiful on the passing side last year, and it affected the consistency of the running game.
And of course, we don't talk about it enough, but Will Lutz coming back is going to be huge. And of course, you know, Rizzi was retained. He was a guy that also, remember when Peyton went out, he was kind of like a co-head coach. And Allen has said he's going to be leaning on all of his coaches, you know, going forward. Special teams, there was an emphasis put on this on special teams a few years back by Sean Payton, and I'm glad they did. Because of that, they've been one of the tops in the league. I'm expecting that to continue.
Special teams win and lose games.
Right.
And just without Lutz last year, you can count one game right away, Tennessee, that you lost because he wasn't there, and there were others where the kicking game's unreliable nature really affected the Saints' ability to execute their game plan and may have cost them another game or two if you look at it. The special teams the Saints have are right at the top of the NFL, and that makes them a real contender. In part because you can look at the Saints and their overall talent in all three phases of the game, and even if they don't have a true franchise quarterback right now, you know that they can be a winning team on every snap, including those crucial special team snaps. The Saints are so good there, and adding guys in this draft, I think everybody after the first round can contribute to make those special teams even better, particularly when you talk about Jackson, the linebacker. His speed will help in that area, and everybody's talked about Alontae Taylor. I would be surprised if he's not the other gunner, along with J.T. Gray, that they can try to corral the return game of other teams. You don't want to give up free yards there, and the Saints are focused on doing that, and the results have been pretty spectacular the last few years.
You mentioned franchise quarterback. Look, one of the reasons why Vegas is down on the Saints right now is, again, the unknown with Dennis Allen as a head coach, and also, again, not having a lot of faith in Jameis Winston. Look, I get last year, they really handicapped him with a lack of weapons. There is no excuse this year. He has to step up and be a franchise quarterback. I mean, they've given him every opportunity now with who they've surrounded him with in terms of weapons in the backfield, and also obviously at the wide receiver position as well.
I don't think you make the decision to bring him back if you're going to be as conservative as they were in the 7 games he played last year. But that was a part of lack of trust, because by the start of the season, Sean Payton was well aware we're not very good at wide receiver. We've got a real problem here. So if we let Jameis Winston loose, turnovers are going to come because the windows are going to be extremely tight to throw into. That shouldn't be as much of a problem this year.
Because you got guys that can catch the ball in traffic.
That's right.
And get separation.
Absolutely. So I think it's going to be a deal where he's going to get a chance to do that. The offense is going to be more balanced. And I'm not really worried about it. But when you're looking from a Vegas perspective, all they look back at when they set odds for the average person who's going to throw money on something like that is this was a 9-8 football team. They don't dive into why it was a 9-8 football team last year. We all know that if the injuries weren't so severe, this is easily a double-digit win football team. That's even challenging the Bucs for the division title. I would be surprised if the Saints aren't a 10-plus win football team.
Me too. I mean, look, I'll be surprised if they don't win the division. I think they're going to be right there.
That's
with
still
Tampa.
Tough with the Bucs, but there's no doubt they can win it.
Tampa's in flux too, though.
You're telling me that Carolina or Atlanta is going to challenge?
No.
Look, the Saints last year didn't get the job done and do what they needed to against those teams.
That's right.
They need to go 4-0 against those teams this year. If they do, they'll definitely have 10, 11 wins.
And that'll make sure they're in the playoffs. You look at those losses, that kind of kept them out.
No doubt.
Our guest today is Jude Young, CrescentCitySports.com, 106.1 FM Nash Icon. All Access is his show. I'm Eric Asher. We'll take a quick break, hear from our underwriters. When we come back, we'll shift gears. We'll talk a little bit about the Breakers. We'll jump into the Pels, talk college baseball. All that coming up next here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Stick around.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Jude Young is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. USFL Breakers now 5-2. I'm sorry, 5-3. They're second place in the South. They've lost to the Birmingham Stallions now twice, 22-13 early in the season. Last weekend, 10-9. Tempe Bandits are on tap on Sunday at 3 o'clock on Fox. Looks like this team has a shot to go to the playoffs. Right. They're a pretty decent team. But haven't been able to get over the hump when it comes to the Stallions. But for the most part, I mean, again, we've talked about it on the show last few weeks. How's that going to translate to coming back to New Orleans? Where are you going to play? And can you grab the sports fans' attention to be able to have them come out and see the games? Especially now with them playing in Birmingham, really with only fan base really there is Birmingham.
Right, exactly. I think they're going to have enough established that they'll be able to come back next year and play in cities. Mm-hmm. And here, there should be early support. You hope the team is at least as good next year as it is this year, because that league's going to have a lot of turnover.
Sure
That's
is.
the nature of your minor league type setup. But I believe if they win this weekend against Tampa, they clinch a playoff berth. And they've only lost to the two top teams in the league, including the two to Birmingham that you mentioned. Close, low-scoring games where they couldn't get over the hump late, but they had their opportunities. And the same can be true of the other game they lost, because they're very good defensively. They're not so great on the offensive line, and the quarterback, although Slaughter's got good numbers, have been spotty. But there's enough talent on that team that they have futures in pro football. We'll see. I don't know how the USFL's handling things. I haven't paid too much close attention to. I'm sure they're giving these guys their opportunities if they get invites to camp. But because they're playing in these leagues right now, they're not in OTAs and mini camps with teams. So it's more of a showcase for the future. That's what I worry about this league and the XFL coming next year. There's only so much talent to go around, and the CFL is still a thing north of the border. There's going to be so much transient movement. How do you keep a cohesive roster together? Hopefully that's figured out as far as the Breakers go, because if they're decent, people love football. And there's some nostalgia from that one year that they were here in '84 in the original USFL. Folks will give it a shot.
What do you think they play?
To me, it seems like Yeoman has to be the place to play.
It's got to be, right?
It facilitates the product best. There's still a dream that one day they can get it right when you look at Tad Gormley and get some money in there to renovate it for who knows whose purpose. Maybe a UNO if their vote passes, the plan coming up in November to add football, maybe an initiative to really help local high school football, as well as track and field and other events that facility can hold. Those are really the only two options, because we've heard about what they're planning to do with the Shrine on Airline, put $45 million into it if everything passes as hoped. That'll be a nice facility that'll host soccer and football and rugby and seat about 10,000. Maybe that's the best place for the Breakers long term, but it's hard to talk about long term with something like the USFL.
I agree. And we talked about that last week on the program as well, about the future of the Shrine on Airline. And I think it's got to be a multi-purpose facility. And I think it's got to be available not just for the New Orleans, the Gold. I think high school has to be able to play there. I think you're gonna do rugby, soccer, even lacrosse. I think you have to make it a multi-purpose stadium, and then you could start deriving revenue from it as well.
And the initiative is there to make that happen and make it a good concert facility and have covered seating, which is so important to be able to make it work so you can be profitable this time of year. And if you're going to do soccer on what they're talking about, the USL level, which is the level below MLS, you've got to play this time of year. It's brutal, so they've got to make the facility comfortable. It's already convenient to get to, but comfortable so it can house soccer, it can house rugby, and high school football will definitely take advantage of it. The private schools, will jump at the opportunity to play someplace that will have turf according to the plans that are out there for it, and again, the right size of grandstand that can be covered, that can facilitate fans.
The shell of the facility is there. You just got to enhance it, modernize it, bring it up to date, and also, again, Look, we did it with the Superdome, multi-purpose. It's not multi-purpose anymore for the most part. It's a football stadium. But again, multi-purpose is what we need to be looking at on the Shrine of Airline on the island, because we need another facility for high school sports in this town.
And folks saying, what about baseball? We have to mention that because MLB took full control of their minor leagues and downsized so heavily, right after you lost a team in a dilapidated facility by AAA standards, it's going to be very difficult to be able to grab a team that's in the MLB system. You don't have a facility for it. You need something, I think, built new that's the right size, not too big. That could be the type of deal where can you do an MGM park like they have in Biloxi and be a AA level ball club? Can you get in the door to have an affiliation? And if you can't, what league are you going to be in? There are independent leagues that are going to thrive and be an entertainment and developmental sort of offshoot of the minor leagues. A lot there for the baseball fans that I know are upset. Don't expect a team here anytime soon, unfortunately.
Well, the Southern League is the natural gravitation toward, but I mean, again, who's giving up a team?
Right.
Okay. No. Again, these are smaller towns. That's their team. The entire town rallies around that team. So it's going to be difficult. But I know there are quite a few people working on that, including a former council member, Arnie Filko, and others that would like to see baseball come back.
If they can get a ballpark built, a brand new state-of-the-art facility, that will open eyes in Major League Baseball. You'll have a real chance at that point. But how much is that going to cost? Where's that money going to come from?
Right. Good news for the Pelicans, and I got to say that again, it's really been, a real big turnaround. But Zion, again, look, they're smart to do this. They put out video and pictures the other day of Zion working out at the facility. Players are said to be able to get together and hold workouts like they did last year. Zion is supposed to be among them. Vegas, Phoenix, possibly going out to Herman Gomez's camp in Spain as well. So we're already seeing this now, and I've talked about it for a few years now. He's got to enhance his game. Okay, one thing is getting in shape and staying in shape and injury-free. He's got to get that mid-range shot going, eventually a three-pointer, but I'm not really worried about like a mid-range now. But the other thing is working on defense, understanding defensive concepts, realizing what he's got to do, not only one-on-one defense, but team defense as well. These are the things he has to work on during the summer to be able to take his game to the next level, which will take this team to the next level.
And you can argue from a being in shape standpoint that the number one reason you want to be in shape is to be healthy and on the court.
Yes.
Second, out of all those areas you just mentioned, defense is affected most by him not being in the best of shape. When he's around 3 bills versus where you'd like to have him closer to 250, his lateral movement, both as an on-ball defender and part of a team concept, is going to be affected significantly. And if Zion doesn't want to be in a situation where when he's on the court, you're asking him to guard centers because that's all you can trust him to do and have to bang more with those guys and the wear and tear that comes from that, I mean, it's on him. If he doesn't want that to happen, because that'll be the best way to get him on the court and make him playable both ways, then he needs to get in the type of shape it seems like, and you can only tell so much from pictures.
Exactly.
He seems dedicated to the weight room, but I want to see him slim. I want to see him have endurance. I want to see him work on his flexibility so that he can stay on the court, because he's got plenty of athleticism when he's simply not fat to be a dominant player. That's going to be important for him, and there's no roadmap to maturity. Some people never mature. Some people do it late. Maybe this is the time. There's the right leadership in the building, from the head coach to the veterans with C.J. McCollum, and the leadership they have in the organization. You talk about some of the former players they brought in key spots like Trajan Langdon, Swin Cash. You've got people in the building that help create that culture where they know how to be successful pros, and I think he respects all of them. And he's probably finally listening, and the best thing that ever happened to the Pelicans to make him listen, winning without him.
And also the criticism. I mean, this is a guy who's never had criticism. Since AAU to Duke, high school, whatever, he's been the star. He comes in the NBA, he's lauded as the next great player, the next face of the NBA. He got criticism this offseason.
But people can go internal if they don't react to the criticism the right way and not use it to motivate them to be better and address their faults. He could, and maybe could still go the other way on that end of things. I think that the criticism, his handlers were able to block out a lot of that for him. I think what got his attention big time was the fact that this team did win without him, and it's telling him, hey, if you plug in here, we can be a title contender. And if you're not motivated to win, you're not motivated to be special like he can be.
8th pick in the draft. Do they keep the pick? Do they trade the pick? Do they try to move up? What do you think they do on draft night?
I think they need to do what they have to do to go get their guy. They're hoping never to be picking this high again. You can't rely on the Lakers pick swaps coming up to work out. The Lakers may do enough to get it right and just be average. So you may not be in the top 10 ever again. So if you have this opportunity where you need to use more ammo to move up, if you target a guy who has the right chemistry fit, the right talent set, and you project that player to be a certain level in a year, 2, 3, be aggressive and go after him. At the same time, if they don't feel like they can pull that off, and I'm sure they're trying to exercise those options and phone calls right now, if they can't pull it off, then yeah, maybe then trade back, dump some salary. You've got some players that, yeah, you don't have to do it now, but if you can in the draft and you think like they did last year where they moved back and they got Trey Murphy and it worked out extremely well, maybe they can do something like that again. I think all those options are open, and it's a tough call. Right now, I would assume they have a bullpen of 8. And if they're not happy with who that 8th guy can be, when they rank the players 1 through 8, it's like, you know, if we're not happy who the 8th player is, we need to have the ability to either trade out or be aggressive early if we get the feel from intel that, you know, we're not going to have the guy we want there to spend that capital on. Then they need to be aggressive and move up. Future picks, who cares? They're ready to win now.
Well, they have so many future picks available. Even this year, you know, again, when you look at the 2 second-rounders, you know, I've been an advocate for, again, drafting European players and stashing them, okay? Take that San Antonio Spur model, because down the line, again, you may get a diamond in the rough that ends up coming in and playing well for you. So it's interesting to see, again, how they play that out. And look, they don't have many spots available on this roster, so there could be a movement of veteran players as well. Let's talk a bit about the let's talk baseball, and then I want to see if we have some more time left for some football as well. First of all, let's talk about Tulane. They fired Travis Jewett. They hired yesterday interim coach Jay Yeoman, former Oregon assistant, former Kansas assistant, former Nevada assistant, was the head coach at Los Angeles Harbor Junior College in 2000, 2001. He was 62-22 during that time. Supposedly, this was the team going to Dannon saying that, again, they wanted Yeoman to be the head coach. There are 15 players that are the core of this team that are in the transfer portal right now. I'm sure that was part of the thought process in maybe hiring him. Tulane fans wanted a Tulane guy in that position. They got an assistant who was on Jewett's staff. Your thoughts on Yeoman, your thoughts on the move?
Well, it's interesting because you try to attack it from different angles. Why did they make this decision? Why did Troy Dannon decide to go with an assistant, your recruiting coordinator, on a staff from a coach you fired? I mean, it's happened before. You know, Lenny Van Gelder wrote about it on CrescentCitySports.com and said, look, a Dabo Swinney situation can happen. I'll even bring up an Ed Orgeron situation, who's his own worst enemy in the end, but look what he accomplished early. So maybe somebody that's in the building knows what's been going wrong, whether it's getting the most out of the players, in-game decisions, building the right staff, whatever Allman sold to Dannon, plus the player support, had the combo to make it happen. Because if the players are from a program that hasn't been to the NCAA tournament in 6 years, even though you've got some good players on that roster, no doubt, that can only go so far if you think you found the right guy. Leading up to it, we talked about how Tulane needs to find somebody who comes in who has a vision for how to get Tulane back to a perennial top 25 program, should be right up there with East Carolina and the American type level team. And I don't think they found that. I think they talked to a lot of people, and all those people who were in good situations, whether assistant or head coaches already, said, well, if I come there, money's probably not as important as I need this, I need that. You may need to change that. I may need this wiggle room that isn't there currently. So probably what they were hearing from these candidates, Tulane's not willing to change, which is probably the biggest reason fans should be concerned. But Allman probably said, on the flip side, we're all guessing here, that, hey, the situation, I can make it work. We've gotten some good players in. The best players on Tulane's team are freshmen and sophomores, as he's been the recruiting coordinator.
Right.
And those are the players you don't want to lose and have to completely start over. So I don't think the fear of starting over was as big of a problem as Tulane looked at other candidates who said, you know, I think you need to upgrade the ballpark. I think we got to find a way to get more kids in here. What are you doing with NIL? We need more money to compete to get these players now. And Tulane probably didn't have the answers that those people wanted to hear, where Allman gave the answers that Dannon wanted to hear.
Right. And we'll see how it works out. But again, these guys are now attached at the hip, Dannon and Yeoman. So if Yeoman is successful, then probably Dannon survives. If he's not, more than likely, that's probably his last head coaching hire.
Could very well be. At this point, who else would it be? Unless Ron Hunter takes another step this year and he's looking to hire another basketball coach. People won't mind that because he got it right last time. But otherwise, Willie Fritz isn't going anywhere. And obviously, Allman needs at least 3 years to see if he can right the ship.
Louisiana Tech lost in the College Station Regional. Louisiana Lafayette in the College Station Regional. Louisiana Tech lost in the Austin Regional. Southeastern lost in the Auburn Regional. Let's talk LSU, who finishes with 40 wins, loses to USM in the Hattiesburg Regional. Really brought some great games with the win over Kennesaw State, the win over USM, and all in extra innings. But when you look at this team right now with Jay Johnson, I give him a tremendous amount of credit, getting here late, using the transfer portal to try to upgrade the roster, but it's pretty obvious what he needs. He needs pitching. He needs, again, this team has to be a better fielding team, and somehow, some way, maybe he's got to get to some of these guys that are going to be going to the major leagues and maybe get them to stay another year and maybe hold on to this #1 recruiting class, which we know, again, the history of LSU, a lot of those guys are picked early and end up going into the minor leagues or to Major League Baseball. Your thoughts on the LSU season?
Everything as far, we'll get to the season in a moment, but everything I'm hearing as far as the recruiting and the plans to supplement a little bit, but not a lot in the portal, LSU will not have a numbers problem. They're going to be swollen with numbers, and they think in the arms category in particular, they're going to have better overall groupings of pitching, including a lot more left-handers. They've kind of focused on that because that was neglected by Paul Maneri in his final years as the head coach. They think they're going to be much better there and be able to develop pitching. Like you mentioned last year, they just started so late to be able to fix a major set of problems. Defensively, Alex Milazzo is supposed to come back. They really need that level of catcher defensively. Your spine's got to be strong. You'll still have Dylan Cruz in center field, and they can't move forward with Jordan Thompson at shortstop. Fortunately, they have those high-level signees that you hope you don't lose to the draft. Get at least one of them on campus, and the better defender is going to play. But overall this season, they won and lost based on the strengths of potent offense, although streaky, but still won 17 SEC games and got over the 40-win mark total. That's pretty good considering you didn't have a Friday night ace, and outside of Hilliard, who at best should have been a Sunday guy, they didn't have a true starting pitcher.
It's true.
It's incredible. They pieced it together, and the defense was poor. The only concern LSU fans rightfully should have is you look at Johnson's last couple of Arizona teams, they were sort of built to win the same way. There were questions about him putting the best bats on the field maybe a little too much and the defense suffering as a result. I don't think you can win in the SEC and be a College World Series team consistently doing that. So I think he's paying attention to that. He's a smart guy. He's a program builder. He's got the skins on the wall. He's a good front man for the program. I have no doubt that LSU's in good hands, but boy, the SEC is so competitive. Look what happened in Mississippi State. Penthouse to the outhouse. Finally win the College World Series. Finish at the bottom of the league.
Yeah, it tells you how strong they are. Speaking of SEC, meetings, spring meetings were last week. Really no decision yet, but there are a lot of things on the table right now. First of all, it looks like they're going to get rid of the divisions. Those are gone, okay? There may be pods, there may be rotating divisions, 3 or 4 permanent opponents, possibly going to 9 conference games. We know that, again, when you look at it right now, we're going to see a real change when it comes to how scheduling is done in the SEC, especially when Texas and Oklahoma come into the league in 2025, which looks like that is going to be it now. There was talk it would be 2023, 2024. It will be 2025 now.
Right. The exit fee it's not negotiable on the Big 12 side. They're just too high, so Texas and Oklahoma, they're not going to pay to get out early
Right.
9 figures, and nor should they. So that does give the SEC time to take care of their internal politics. Let's talk about the scheduling. It's pretty obvious that they should go to the pod system of 4 teams
I agree.
and 9 conference games. And the only thing stopping it is not the Alabama, Georgia, LSUs of the world. It's the bottom half of the league traditionally in football, because they're scared of not getting the 6 wins and making a bowl game.
Right.
And think about how sad that is, that you can schedule 3 layups and you only got to get 3 out of 9 wins to be bowl eligible. And there are a lot of teams in the league that are scared that they're not going to be able to do that consistently.
Right.
That's the biggest holdup. They need to get over it, because if you're going to have a league this big, 16 teams, you got to play in order to have a balanced schedule. You've got to play the 9 games. And on top of that, they can set up the pods so that you can see every team in the league at least every 4 years.
As you should, right?
Which hasn't been happening,
Right.
and it's really sad, because what's the point of calling yourself a conference if you can't see a third of your teams in your league,
Right.
but every maybe 8 or 10 years?
Right. If a guy stays 4 years and he never gets to see one or 2 of the teams in the conference, it's ridiculous.
And a fan can get to see a particular team in your league play in their home stadium once a decade?
Right.
That's pathetic.
No, it is. And it's going to be interesting again how they do this, but I'm with you. I think the pods, again, with the 9 conference games are the way to go. Who's going to be the LSU quarterback this year?
You know, from everything I've heard, not having seen practice and only watching the video clips that are available in the spring game, I think there's a lot of fire to that smoke about Garrett Nussmeier.
Right.
And that's, when you think about it strategically, if it's close, that's the right move, because it sounds like Daniels isn't going to leave, no matter what happens, because he's going to see some playing time
Right.
as the running quarterback,
Yes.
and he knows he has some development to do. Or I don't think he'd have come to LSU with the talent they had at quarterback on the roster when he did. You may lose Miles Brennan if you do that. You may not lose him until August,
Right.
but that could very well happen, and he goes to some FCS to try to play. Or gets a waiver and goes to an FBS school. But at this point, I think there's a lot to the development that Nussmeier's made, because new coach, new staff, new system, and he's the most talented of those 3. Walker Howard is a true freshman.
Right.
He's going to be the long-term plan for a starter, but it may be after 2 years of Nussmeier. Again, long way to go.
Yes.
It's going to matter what happens in preseason camp, but I think Nussmeier might be the guy.
With about a minute left, has Tulane done enough to get over the hump this year?
I just don't know. When you look at where they are as a program and the limitations on the overall talent they can bring in, it's all going to come down to how good Michael Pratt is this year. Can he elevate his game? If Tulane's going to be more than just a team that struggles to get bowl eligible, Pratt's got to be an all-conference caliber performer. Every successful Tulane team in the recent past for Tulane, going back to what Tommy Bowden did.
Yeah.
You got to have a great quarterback,
Yes.
a great college quarterback, and they haven't had that. Is Pratt that guy? He took a beating last year. Hopefully the offensive line's better. Hopefully he's a quicker decision maker, so he's not holding the ball too
Right.
long. It's all going to come down to him, whether they're battling for 6 wins or they're looking to do a whole lot more.
Right. No, I would agree. It'll be interesting to see again how they progress, because Willie Fritz is on no hot seat, but he's got to be again better than what we saw last year.
And he's been transitioning to be a coach who's more open to the spread offense and knowing you've got to throw the football,
Right.
you've got to have the explosive play as much as he wants to run the ball. So that's still in progress, and they've had so much turnover at offensive coordinator.
Yes.
That doesn't make the job
No,
easy.
and that's been a revolving door, no doubt about it. Jude, as always, thanks so much for joining us. Jude Young, again, CrestCitySports.com. Also, All Access on 106.1 every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. Plus, fills in from time to time, him and Ken switching off. And, of course, something I failed to mention as we open the show, the voice of UNO Athletics as well, who does a great job there. And next time we got him on, we'll talk about what's going to happen with the basketball team over at UNO. Always, thanks so much. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, plenty of ways to be able to catch our program. It's up on the screen for you right now. Again, so many rebroadcast. Also, again, the QR code. You can put your phone up, click on that. It'll take you right to the WLAE-TV YouTube page or to my website, which again denotes all the rebroadcasts that we have of this program. You can catch me on the radio, 106.1 FM. That is weekdays 4 to 6. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, the iHeart iHeartRadio app, the TuneIn Radio app. Anchor is our home base for our podcast. We're on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside New Orleans Show with Eric Asher, and you can find the podcast. Again, special thanks to Jude Young for joining us on the program today. Also to the WLAE production staff and our underwriters who make this show possible. Please support those underwriters. The staff includes Logan Graffia, also Alex Chacon, Tommy O'Connor, today Ron Yeager in the control booth, Jim Dotson, and of course William Hill on a little bit of vacation. So Alex Chacon was in the director's chair and doing a fantastic job. All those guys do a great job each and every week bringing this program to you, and we're very thankful to have them. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.